Good morning, everyone. And today in Saturday SMS, we have Arun Jhajerji to deliberate upon Section 23 of CGST Act. Section 22, 23, and 24 are generally spoken in a common length regarding registration. And as we have seen in the last two sessions on Section 22, that the section that which we understood to be a very simple section, and since 8 years have gone by, so not much deliberation would be there. So it took two sessions to deliberate on Section 22, and similar intricacies lie in Section 23 and 24. So we have amongst us Arunji, who would be discussing on Section 23, and Arunji is presently associated with GSTN also. And so he would be giving some insights to various issues which are being faced in Section 23 and what the actions are being taken at the government level. So over to you, Arunji, for Section 23.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. So let me start with the Section 23. We all know that Section 23 is a very small section. It is divided in the two subsection. Subsection 1 is giving the relaxation for those person who are not making the taxable supplies. We will discuss in detail. And the second clause in the agriculture is third subsection, I can say subsection 2, in which we need to give the more deliberation. Let me start with the Section 23, subsection 1, clause A. It says that the person shall not be liable to take registration if they are exclusively engaged in the business of the supply of the goods or services, or both, or that are not leviable to tax or are wholly exempt. So I can say it first impose the condition that you should exclusively engage in which that either not leviable to tax or are fully exempt from tax. So from the word not leviable to tax, we can say it is simply telling that non-taxable supplies. And what is the meaning of the wholly exempt from tax? The tax is not leviable by way of exemption notification. Now, if I read 23 subsection 1 clause A, then one doubt would arise. Suppose I am a restaurant and I am only engaged in the supply through e-commerce operator, that Zomato. We all know that Zomato, Swiggy, etc. are leviable to tax, are liable or considered as a deemed supplier because of the 9(5). Correct. So now the question comes, I being a restaurant, will you say my supply is exempted? I can say that it is not exempted by any exemption notification. Can I say that it is the supply which is not leviable to tax? No, we can't say that. So I do agree that we all know that in the case of 9(5), the e-commerce operator would be liable to tax. Supplier is not liable to tax. But will I get exempted from 23(1)(a), and therefore I am not required to pay the I'm not required to take a registration in the GST by virtue of the 23(1). So in my understanding, let me share then over to all the group member, that because it is not exempted, and which we can slightly correlate with the GSTR 1, earlier we were supposed to report in one of the table, that is table 8. But now the government has made the separate table, the table 14B. Therefore, in my understanding, I am a restaurant, my supply can't be considered as exempted. Therefore, even though I am exclusively engaged, therefore I'm exclusively engaged in the supply through through ECO, 9(5) ECO, still I'm liable to take registration. This is my view. over the group. Yes, Venu sir.
Yeah, so I agree with the view. It's just that when we are talking about table 14, just want to interrupt there. Isn't it table 14 a dual reporting? Meaning 14A I reported elsewhere and I'm again reporting in 14. So I will still continue to report as my exempted turnover in table 8 and again report it in table 14. Isn't that the expectation?
Okay, you mean to say the reporting in the table 14B as well as in the table 8, is it?
Yes.
No, in my view, why I am saying so? Because table 8 is linked to 3B 3.1.C.
Yeah.
And 14B is linked to 3.1.1 serial number 2.
Correct.
Then both will be added in my aggregate turnover. So my WTO will increase by this amount, double counting. So therefore, it would be only in one table. This is my understanding.
Okay, let me relook the aggregate turnover which is there. But otherwise, my understanding is wherever there is an outward supply where it is under taxable with 1% goes to table 4 and 14A. Wherever it is
Absolutely
9.5, it goes to 8 and 14B. So
correct.
the turnover
Okay.
is a reporting of turnover in table 14 is a additional reporting. That's what I remember. I will check and come back.
Fine, sir. Just
Yeah.
only one point, that because 14A is only being captured to control some other purpose like issue by supply.
I get it. I get that. Yeah.
Correct, sir.
Yeah.
Correct, sir.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
any other counter view that if I am a restaurant only making the supply through 9.5, then in my view, even though I'm not liable to tax, but still I am not exempted from 23(1)(a, I have to take registration. This is my view. So, shall I proceed further?
Yes, sir. Anyone else? Do you see anything?
Yes,
Okay.
Venuji.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, Venuji. So if we go by this analogy, and I have a thought also on this, that since the turnover under section 9 subsection 5, it is clearly my turnover, only the liability to pay tax has been shifted on the e-commerce operator. And that's why when the circular is there, that since they are required to pay tax in cash on that turnover, it would not be relevant for the purpose of rule 42 and 43 for them, e-commerce operator. Now the question comes to me, supposedly I am a person whose tax is being liable to be paid by the e-commerce operator. Now, firstly, it is not an exempt supply. That we all agree, it is not an exempt supply.
Correct, sir.
So it's a taxable supply. Section 17 subsection 2 says that any turnover on which the tax is liable to be paid under RCM shall be treated as an exempt turnover for the purpose of reversal. I am deviating from this section, but since the issue about e-commerce operator has been raised, so I thought to link it with this. So, do we agree that this is not a turnover on which tax is liable to be paid under RCM?
No.
See, I would seek a view of Arunji and all the person also. In my opinion, it is not a turnover on which tax is liable to be paid under RCM. It is still being paid under forward charge. The only thing is that it is being paid by the e-commerce operator, not by the supplier. So by virtue of that, it should not be covered and treated as a exempted turnover. Hello.
Huh. Yeah. So, Arpiji, now the way the department is considering is 9.5 also as RCM. That's how the department
RCM is a tax on
concluding.
which tax is liable to be paid by the recipient.
Yes, but they say here in 9.5 it is neither the supplier nor the recipient, it's the third person. So the department is saying even that is a reverse charge liability. And the moment we say that is reverse charge liability, then the supplier can claim the exemption of non-registration. So the hotels and other 9.5 people can go for an exemption saying that it is an exempted turnover.
Yes, but it is their understanding. The thing which I see, the reverse charge, it is tax to be paid on the inward supplies. Reverse charge has been defined under section 2 also.
So I like to add one point, sir. This particular point has been specifically covered in the circular 167, in which the question was, can the supply the restaurant made through ECO an inward supply which they are liable to reverse charge? The answer was no. If you are not the recipient of restaurant services, since they are not input service to ECO, these are not to be considered as inward supply liable to RCO. This is my view.
Yes, that is what the view is, that this is not a inward supply liable to reverse charge, and once it is not a supply liable to reverse charge by the e-commerce operator, so it is no longer covered for me under section 17 subsection 2 for the purpose of reversal of ITC. And it is still a taxable supply from me, and therefore I should not be asked to reverse the proportionate ITC on this turnover, even though I am not liable, I am not paying the tax. The e-commerce operator is paying the tax.
Fine.
The analogy which I am trying to draw is that it is not an exempt supply. Secondly, it is not a turnover liable to reverse charge by the recipient. So thereby 17.2 and 3 is not applicable. And since 17.2 and 3 is not applicable, and principally it is not an exempt supply, so it still remains a taxable supply for me. And once it is a taxable supply, I should not be asked to reverse the ITC on this turnover, proportionate treating it as an exempt supply.
So, RPG, let's look at this way. Let's take same restaurant, okay?
Yeah.
Now let's consider there is an entity which is doing some trading of food equipment, food items, which is taxable as forward charge. And
Yes.
it also has a restaurant which is taxable at 9.5.
Yes.
And the rent that is paid to
Yes.
the property. Now,
Yes.
if we say the outward supply is under 9.5, someone else is paying, but the
Yes.
ITC is eligible to be availed. Okay.
Yes.
I am not supposed to talk this way. I should only talk from the law. But how do we define the logic saying that output not applicable, but ITC is allowed?
The output is applicable. That's why the entire 5% is being deposited by the government.
Output is enjoyed by some, incurred by someone. Input is enjoyed by
No,
someone.
sir, Venuji, it is not being incurred. The only liability to pay is being shifted. Ultimately,
Okay.
the supplies are still being made by me. The only liability which is being shifted is the liability to pay. So there are two different concepts: who is making the supply and who is making the payment of tax.
Now,
so for me, it is still a taxable supply.
Then are we saying that this qualifies as an inverted duty structure? The accumulated ITC can be claimed as a refund.
Yes,
Unless
once it is a
by
taxable
15.
supply. Once it is a taxable supply, and it is not covered under the purview of exempt supply and also under 17.2 and 17.3. So it remains a taxable supply, and therefore I am entitled to claim the ITC on the tax on the inward services, even though they are being used directly or proportionately for these services.
RPG, my query is that this tax which is being paid by ECO, we are saying it is the primary liability of restaurant, but ultimately being paid by the ECO.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So how the book entry, how this ECO will shift this liability to original restaurant, sir? How the book entry will be there?
Sir, ultimately, the tax is being collected by the ECO in his books, and it's being deposited by ECO in his books.
So in the
invoice is mine. Okay. I am making the taxable supply, but the tax is being collected and deposited by the ECO. So the supplier is not being changed. Only the liability to pay tax is being shifted.
But sir, in restaurants invoice, there will be no mention of tax. Will there be mention of tax? No.
No, Arunji, that has also been clarified by the circular which you were referring.
Let me share that circular.
There is one specific query regarding who will be charging the.
That is the GST return. I think reporting in the number.
No. Point number 9. Point number 9.
Would restaurant service and goods and services other than restaurant sold by the restaurant to the customer under the same order billed differently? Who shall be liable to raise the invoice? Considering the liability to pay the GST on the supplies other than restaurant through ECO and other compliances, including issuance of the invoice to the customer, continue to lies with the respective supplier, and ECO are liable only to collect the tax. Correct, sir. So that will continue to be the responsibility of the actual restaurant.
Yes. Yeah, they would not be. ECO is not issuing their own invoice. The invoice is still being issued by the supplier. Only the amount of tax is being retained. Once the ECO collects the entire amount, he only remits the net amount to the supplier and deposits the balance amount to the government.
So it means RPG, it will be taxable supply of the restaurant, and restaurant must be showing this into his GSTR 3B and GST1 extra. Will it be like that, sir?
Shall I add one
Yes.
point?
Yes, Arunji.
Absolutely correct, sir. If I go to the GSTR 1, in the table 14, they are asking the taxable value and also they are asking the tax component. They have not hide the tax component. And only in the 3B, they are only collecting the value of the taxable value, not the taxes. We all know that, yes, it is not the responsibility of the restaurant. But if I go to the GSTR 1, I have to report everything.
So then, sir, RP sir view is very much correct that it is a taxable supply of a restaurant, and we should get ITC also in that. All those things are there. Okay, I think. RPG, this was your view, sir?
Yes. The only thing is that we are not going on to the tax rates of 5% or 12%. We are only discussing that if the ECO is the ECO is liable to pay, but the supplier is someone else, and since it is not an exempted supplier nor covered under 17.2, the supplier should be eligible to claim the credit.
Sir, your view is strengthened by another section, section 10. When there is this scheme for composition scheme, there is a rider in that. If someone is selling through ECO, then he will not be eligible for the composition supply. So
Yes.
that also strengthens our view that it is a taxable supply of the restaurant. Okay.
Yes.
But Arpit sir, in that point, I like to add one point. If I go by that restriction of 10, they are only restricting 52. They are not restricting 95. It means if I'm a composite dealer, restaurant, even I can make the supply the service through ECO liable to collect tax under liable to pay tax under 95.
But sir, there is I think 95. वो section 10(1) में there is I think section. It is if supply is made through ECO. That is
no, sir. It is section 52 is liable to collect the tax. So in this case, he would not be liable to collect the tax because he is discharging the tax himself.
So they are eligible. Composition scheme is eligible in this case. Only the tax would be double. Being a composition dealer, I have to pay the tax on any supply, including exempted. Now the 95 ECO is also paying the tax. So in this case, government is double advantage. Government is probably getting the taxes from composition dealer as well as restaurant. But if I talk about the restriction which told by SK sir, in my understanding, this restriction is not there. I am a composition dealer. I can very well make the supply through Zomato.
Sir, can we refer section 10 to please that restriction language?
They are specifically using the word section 52. Let me open, sir. Give me 1 minute. Let me open that section.
So Arunji, how the things would go that if I am a person who has opted for composition scheme and e-commerce operator is collecting the tax and depositing the same, the question will come that being a person who is in a composition scheme, how would I be charging the tax?
I means composition dealer?
Yes, correct.
So problem
how I would be, because the circular clearly says that I have to charge the tax and the ECO would be depositing it.
And it will be my taxable supply. And composition can't make that taxable supply. That is a thing, a big thing. I think we should refer to that section 10 to restrictions.
If you can share section 10 too.
I'm sharing.
This is important.
So if we can see it like this way, that if the e-commerce operator would not have been made liable to pay tax under 9(5), he would have been required to collect tax under section 52.
Okay. If
So therefore, if I am making a supply through e-commerce operator, even though he might not be collecting the tax, but still I would not be eligible to 10(2)(d), because in this case tax is required to be charged by me.
so, sir, it means tax collected at source. At one stage, sir, there must be some difference. Now, TCS is to be collected by every ECO
Other than 9(5).
other than 9(5). So it means we can, if then, sir, the scenario will change. If a combustion dealer, Arunji is saying that it is a double advantage for the government. So combustion dealer is paying 1% on the 6% on that.
5%. 5%.
5% on that.
Restaurant is 5%.
Restaurant is 5% on that, and they are also ECO is not paying tax on that. No, then ECO is only
No, ECO is liable to pay the tax because it is covered under 9(5). He has to pay on every supply.
he has to pay. Okay.
So how does this
In my
work?
opinion, the a combined reading of two sections would be that ECO is required to collect the tax, but since the liability is on him, so he is not collecting the tax, he is depositing the tax. Therefore, once he makes a supply through ECO, then he would not be eligible to remain in the composition scheme.
यही मेरा भी यही सोचना था अर्पित जी. I don't know.
Because the tax is required to be charged by the ECO on the invoice, by the supplier on the invoice. But if he is under the composition scheme, he would not be able to charge the tax. And once he would not be able to charge the tax, the ECO would not be able to pay the tax under 9(5). So the primary requirement for 9(5) is that tax should be charged on the invoice by the supplier. So if I am being allowed to go into the composition scheme, the primary requirement of charging of tax on the invoice would not be there. And once it would not be there, so therefore the entire scheme would be defeated. So in my opinion, there might be different opinions. Once a person is making a supply through ECO and ECO is required to deposit the tax, then in such case, composition scheme shall not be allowed.
So this is my view also, sir. I was also.
Okay. Accepted. So shall I move further?
Yes, Arunji.
So 23 subsection 1 clause B is very simple. If I'm an agriculturist and making the supply, every supply, no, only the supply which are produced out of the cultivation of land, then I can take the exemption and not liable to take registration in the GST. The definition of agriculturist is limiting only individuals and HUF who undertake the cultivation of land by own labor or family or servant or wages, payable in cash or kind or by hired labor under personal supervision or the personal supervision of any member of family. So if I'm agriculturist, but my formation is, let's say, corporate company, then in that case, I cannot take the exemption. Second, if I'm agriculturist, but making the supply which is not produced out of the cultivation of land, let's say I'm into the dairy farming, then again, I cannot take the exemption in the 23(1)(b). Would I be liable to take mandatory registration? So probably it will depend upon, like, suppose I'm agriculturist, I'm making the cashew nut ka supply. Then again, I would be relaxed because of another provision that we will discuss. Second, if I'm agriculturist, providing the supply which is not out of the cultivation of land, but that is exempt supply, I can take the benefit of earlier clause. So this is very simple. And now any question? If otherwise, I will move to the very important discussion of 23(2).
So even here, if we have an agriculturalist who is doing other tax, like a CA having an agricultural farmland, having both the incomes, he would qualify as an agriculturalist. Now, to the extent of the agricultural income, should he assume himself and not disclose, or what would the fate would be?
So because, one second, sir.
I have two questions. Okay, this is first question. Second question is agriculturalist is someone who is also doing the rubber teak. The rubber teak is taxable. Other activities are exempt. But someone who is only doing agricultural activity, agriculturalist, doing say rice paddy cultivation and also rubber teak. So rubber teak is extraction of rubber from the teak is a taxable activity.
Okay.
So how do we? He is only doing an agricultural activity. The another CA taxable supplies and doing the paddy cultivation.
So in question number one, one supply is taxable and one supply is exempted. So I, being a CA, I am agriculturist to the extent of out of the cultivation of land, but also I'm making some supply, taxable supplies. It will be added in the WTO. Every supply would be added in the WTO. And because I am not only engaged in the cultivation of land, so therefore it will be liability would be to take registration if it is exceed my WTO 2040, whatever the case. And same
I am
answer
of the view that the entire agricultural income should be kept up so outside for the purpose of reviewing this section. Like let's say from the chart accountant business, I am making 10 lakhs, and from the agricultural activity, I am making 50 lakhs.
okay, then you can say that he is not required to take registration because below threshold limit.
Yeah.
Oh,
Probably that is the purpose they say to the extent of.
okay. So this will not be added in even calculation of WTO.
Yeah, that's my view.
Okay. I now it appears to be yes. So any other contrary view? And what is your second question, sir?
Venuji,
but-
section 23 is only applicable wherein registration is required to be taken or not.
Yeah, correct.
So once I am liable to take the registration,
Huh.
then section 23 would not be having any implication. Supposedly, in the example which we have taken, supposedly my turnover of rubber is say 20 lakhs is the threshold for registration, and my turnover is say 25 lakhs. Now, once I am liable for registration, since my turnover is more than 20 lakh rupees, so 23 would not be having any applicability. I would, even though I am an agriculturist, I would still be required to pay the tax. Section 23 is not giving me an exemption from levy of GST. It is only giving me an exemption from registration to the extent I am an agriculturist. But once I become a taxable person liable to registration because of some other provision, then agriculturists would also have to pay the tax.
And
So the
what would be your
moot of it is the computation of turnover for the purpose of this. I am saying that the agricultural activity, I will keep it outside and see the limit of 20 lakhs.
Yes, that is acceptable. That is acceptable.
Yeah.
But once I am liable for registrations due to some other turnover, then tax has to be paid, even though I'm
Assuming that some other turnover is now only 10 lakhs. That is my question.
yes.
So I think this would be taken outside and only the taxable turnover would be counted. Correct. And Venu sir, second question was that can you please repeat your second question? Okay. So let me move to the 23 subsection 2. It is a very, very debatable thing because reason is the two 48 GST Council and 49 GST Council meeting. They earlier, if I go to the minutes and agenda item of the 48 GST Council meeting, 48 GST Council meeting, which was talking about amendment to the section 23 to override the provision of 22, subsection 1 and 24, in which if you see section 23 was proposed to be amended as notwithstanding anything, this clause has been placed in two subsection, in both the subsection. It means subsection 1 as well and subsection 2 as well. So notwithstanding anything to the contrary content, it was placed in the 22 subsection 1 and also 23 subsection 1 and 23 subsection 2. कहने का मतलब क्या हुआ कि अगर मैं 23 में जाता हूं, entire 23 as per the 48 GST Council meeting, entire 23 was overriding 22 and 24. But later on, what happened? That the minutes of the GST Council meeting of the 48 is giving the same thing, but the 49 GST Council meeting ka minutes is giving the different answer. It says that if we override 23 subsection 1 also, it will create anomaly. Anomaly in what sense? It says that I need to read certain wording. However, the said amendment, if 23.1 and 23.2, both amendment will be made by the in the section 23, then who are required to pay the duty under RCM would not be required to get registered. So if I am making the exempt supply completely, but suppose there is an RCM liability on me, do I need to take registration or not? It depends upon the amendment. If the proposed amendment of the 48 Council meeting will continue, meaning thereby, if 23.1 is also overriding 22 as well as 24, then I am not required to take registration because of any clause of the 24. Point number 1. So later on, what they have did, they have only amended 23.2. It means, let me go back to the first page. It means if I am exempted from this, but it is covered in the 22.1 or 24, I have to take mandatory registration. I'll give you one example. But if I am covered in this, then I am not required to take registration even by virtue of the 22.1 or 24. I'll take one example for both and then we'll start the discussion. Suppose I am a private limited company. I'm using the word private limited company specifically. And my outward supply is exempted. My outward supply is exempted. But I am getting certain services. So I am not registered till date. My outward supply is exempted. I am not liable to take registration as of now. But suppose I have taken any inward supply, let's say from GTA, and which create the liability on me to pay the tax under RCM, then because I am getting the exemption in the 23.1, I am getting the exemption in the 23.1, but liability is created by virtue of the 24. Do I need to take registration? Answer would be yes, because the 23.2 is only overriding 24. Second example, suppose I am again private limited company, but I am making the supply of the goods within the state and having the turnover below threshold limit. Then I have taken certain GTA service. Do I need to take mandatory registration? Because 24 is applicable, answer would be no. Because there is one notification issued by using the power of 23.2, and therefore the 24 is not applicable on me also. It creates the problem. So in the same example, whatever the example I have taken, this example, so very different situation comes. Suppose I am private limited company making the supply the service within the state. I am private limited company making the supply the service within the state. My turnover is below threshold limit, but I have received GTS service. Do I need to take registration? Mandatorily, yes. And suppose I'm a private limited company making the interstate supply the service, and again I have received the GTS service. Do I need to take registration? Answer would be no, because this person exempted. This person is exempted by virtue of the notification given in the 23.2. And this person is exempted either because of the 22 or because of the 23.1. So therefore, 24 will apply and it will not be, it will be mandatory required to take registration. This is my view. So let me conclude and then start the discussion again. So what is the conclusion? These are the list of the notification which has been issued using the power of 23.2. So these are the following notification. So supply through ECO within the state, if I'm making the supply of the ECO up to 40 lakh goods, exempted. Then services through ECO, inter or intra, exempted. Then interstate supply like job worker or up to 20 lakhs, CTP or handicraft goods, again exempted. Outward RCM is exempted, and other like handicraft goods within the state is exempted. So what is my understanding? So depend ki if I'm exempted, then I have to classify under which clause I am exempted. I am not required to take registration. By which clause I am not required to take registration? Is it 22? Is it 23.1 or is it 23.2? Then it depends upon whether 24 would be applicable on me or not. 24 is applicable, 24 is applicable, 24 is not applicable in third case. So this would be the situation. So I have placed and regarding if my outward supply is exempted, do I need to pay the tax under RCM? If it at all it is applicable, the answer would be yes, considering the amendment. Yes. Over to forum for any discussion. So any contrary view or any something to be added? Fine. Let me add one point. So regarding the RCM notification, or exemption notification, I'll talk about. There are certain services which are exempted. So if I'll take an example, give me sir 1 minute, only 1 minute. So I'm saying that my outward supply is exempted by virtue of 23.1, I am not required to take registration. But suppose if RCM is applicable, then I need to take registration mandatorily because I am exempted in 23.1. Now, if I take this example, let's say I'm a private limited company and my outward supply is exempted. And I am receiving the legal service. Now I am changing the nature of the service, legal service. and my outward supply is exceeding 20 lakh, let's say. Okay. I am receiving the legal service. Will the RCM be applicable? Will the RCM be applicable? See, here the exemption is this company is not required to take a registration. Why? Because its outward supply, irrespective of the outward supply, it take the exemption in the 23(1). So this company otherwise not liable to take registration because of the 23(1). Now they have received the legal service on which RCM is applicable. Will it be exempted? Let me read the language of that RCM notification. Then we will be able to discuss further. Just give me 1 minute. Let me open that notification. Meanwhile, I request to the forum, will it be liable to take registration or not? Can you share your view, please? In this example only, my outward supply is more than 20 lakh, but exclusively exempt supply. So I am not required to take registration. As of now, I am not registered at all. But let's say I am receiving the legal service. I'm receiving the legal service. Then do I need to take registration, or I'm still not liable to take registration? This is the exemption notification, and in which only I like to highlight 9(3) and 9(4). This amendment, 9(3) and 9(4), was also being added in the exemption notification. Okay. And now let me go to the serial number 47. Sorry, 40, it is 45. So a partnership firm of advocate or an individual advocate other than senior, sorry. Any advocate or partnership firm of advocate, or the service has been provided, legal service has been provided to any person other than business entity, or the business entity having the turnover which is eligible to take exemption under CGST Act. So the problem which I could be able to understand, again, the same example, this supplier is making the exclusively exempt supply. It is below threshold limit. Sorry, it is exceeding threshold limit, but not required to take registration, but they are receiving the legal service. Will still be they liable to be exempted? Because they are saying the business entity with an aggregate turnover up to amount in the preceding financial year make it eligible for exemption from registration under the CGST Act. Legal service itself would be exempted. In my understanding, the business entity with an aggregate turnover up to such amount. So basically they are talking about 22(1), and they are not talking about every exemption given in the 23. So in that case, it is liable to take registration and discharge the liability under reverse charge. Any other view of the forum? Or I have created the confusion? I'm not sure. RP sir, would you be like to add?
Yes, if we go through section 22 subsection 1, then the limit is specifying with relation to aggregate turnover in a financial year exceeding 20 lakh rupees, which has been extended to 40 lakh in some cases. So therefore, if my aggregate turnover is exceeding 20 lakh rupees, even though I am making an exempt supply, but if I am receiving a advocate service from advocate or legal service on which tax is liable to be paid under RCM, I would be liable to take the registration.
Okay. So let it be. So if the same example, suppose if it is covered in the 23.2, then the answer would be different.
Yeah, Arunji, if you can share the notification which was there for the person who is making supplies exclusively which are covered under RCM. The notification of 4 या 5/2017, 19 June 2017.
Yes. Let me
Because
open.
that was issued under 23.2.
Yes, sir.
So in that case, if you can just share the notification.
I'm sharing that notification, sir. So that is the 5/2017. I hope it is visible, right?
5/2017.
One second. Central tax rate.
5 या 4 वो जो भी है.
Then it's 5 only, sir. But I think.
Let me read the language of that notification.
It is shared on the screen, sir.
Hereby specify the person who are only engaged in making supplies of goods or services of both the total tax on which is liable to be paid under reverse charge basis by the recipient of such goods or services of both under section 9(3) as a category of person exempted. So now, what is the general understanding is that a GTA is not required to get registered because he is exempted by way of this notification. Now, this notification is only exempting a person from registration if he is making a supply who is only engaged in making supplies of taxable goods or services on which tax is liable to be paid in the RCM. So if he is making an exempted supply, I'm not saying about a taxable supply, because although there are taxable supplies in case of GTA, like scrapping of a tire or a waste. But leave aside that, if there is a exempted supply also, then by way of this notification, he would not be covered under exemption in GST, because he is not making the supplies only which are liable to tax under RCM. Additionally, he is also making an exempted supply. So take an example that I am a person who has given a residential property on rent. The recipient is liable to pay tax under RCM.
Right, sir.
Once the recipient is liable to, we take a supply on which recipient is liable to pay tax under RCM. Additionally, I am making a supply of, say, interest income. I have given loans and advances on which I am receiving an interest. So once I receive an interest on loans and advances, I would not be having the benefit of this notification, because additionally there are supplies on which tax is not required to be paid by the recipient exclusively.
So it means, sir, so I can say that even so clear 23.1 in that case, can I understand or can I say that suppose I am engaged in some supply which are exempted and some supply which are not leviable to tax. In petrol pump, making the supply the petrol and also making some exempt supply.
Yes.
But so it is both are covered in the 23(1), but I will not be able to take exemption.
Yes, I would not be entitled to take exemption, and in such case, I would be liable to get myself registered.
And even though I am not required to pay tax, after registering also, I am not
Yes.
required to pay tax.
Yes.
Fine. So the only point, last point I like to highlight, suppose if this was continuing, suppose I'm assuming that government will make the amendment in 23(1) as well as 23(2), then it would create one more problem. That could be the reason why they have stepped back. Why? Suppose I am government society, okay, and I am only engaged in the exempt supply. I'm only engaged in the exempt supply. So I'm not required to pay the tax. Therefore, I take exemption of registration, normal category. But suppose someone is making the supply to me, it is more than 2.5 lakh. Then this government has to take registration under the TDS category. Why? Because it is covered in the section 24. In this case, that could be one of the logic also. In this case, because if they override 23(1), if they override 24 and 22(1) both from this section, then no government society even liable to take registration under the TDS category. Not only government, let's say I am ISD. Okay. I am having head office who is only distributing the credit. I'm not liable to tax. And also, I will get covered in this 23(1), and therefore I'm not required to take registration under any of the category of the 24. So that could be one of the reasons. So what is the conclusion? Conclusion is, suppose I am exempted in 23(1), but there is an RCM, I have to pay the tax under RCM. Last point, in the case of RCM, certain exemption has been given. So if I read the exemption notification once again, if I read the exemption notification once again, it will include the RCM also. What I like to say, if my outward supply is taxable, now I am saying my outward supply is taxable, but it is below threshold limit, I am not required to take registration by virtue of the 22(1). But if I am getting any inward supply on which otherwise RCM is applicable, do I need to take a registration? Because I am not registered as of now. So, for example, it could be the GTA services. I am any organization providing the taxable supplies, but it is below threshold limit. So I'm not required to take a registration. But let's say I have received certain GTA service. Do I need to take a registration? The answer would be no, because I will get covered by the this exemption notification, then RCM will not be applicable in my case. So let's read: service provided by the GTA to the unregistered person other than 6 specified category. It should not be the body corporate, it should not be the partnership firm, it should not be the casual taxable person. We all factories, societies. So apart from these, if I'm unregistered because of any reason, then the GTA service itself will be exempted. And will it create RCM? Answer is no, because this exemption notification was later on amended and they've inserted the 9394 also in the exemption notification. So I think by this very small section, so that could be the reason I could not stretch too much. So from my side, it's completed. Over to forum for any question.
Arunji, one query is that very simple. It's a very old query. Education society taking legal services. So I think they will have to take registration.
So what is the education societies? Correct. Have to take. So let me read again that serial number 47, 45, which we were reading. So if any partnership form of advocate, individual advocate is providing the service to whom? To the business entity. Which business entity is not taken the registration? Is it not registered because the turnover is below threshold limit? Answer is no, because education society or education institute is exempted by virtue of the 23(1). Correct, because they are providing the exempt supply. But if they receive the legal services, then answer would be yes, they need to take registration. They will not get exemption of this entry, and they will also not, 23(1) is also not overriding 24. So the answer
Correct.
would be, sir, yes.
Yes, yes, sir. And if they are taking GTA service, even then?
The answer would be same, because sir, once again, let me read that particular serial number 21, capital A.
So they are doing that only. GTA business entity not registered.
So service provided by the GTA to the unregistered person.
Oh.
So in this case, they are saying,
Society.
if you are unregistered and you are not covered in the clause, then exemption. But if you are society like, then you have to take registration.
Okay, thank you.
Fine. So, Arpit sir, from my side, it's over. It's completed.
Thank you, Arunji, for
Really
deliberating.
sorry.
For deliberating on section 23 and putting in the insights that how the amendment would have resulted and why the amendment has not been made, and two very important observations which have been made by you, that if it would have been made notwithstanding to 23(1) also, then the TDS registration requirement would not have been there in case the concern is only making exempt supply. So rationale is there for making only for 23(2) and not for not covering 23(1). And additionally, the anomaly which is there, that if I am making an intra-state supply of services, I am liable to take registration if I am required to pay RCM. But if I am making an interstate supply of services, then I am not liable to registration, because that is exemption is coming from 23(2). So that is how the entire scenario works, and the observation that the notification for interstate supply of services exemption has been made subject to section 9(3) and 9(4). So these are all the nitty-gritties for which we conduct SMS. IELTS 23 was very clear to everyone. There was no need for deliberation. But this is how we get to understand the section and how the provision has been made. And once the understanding is there, we can apply that understanding to other reading of the provisions also. So thank you very much for giving a detailed understanding and the rationale behind and linking it with the GST Council meeting. And while we were discussing, all other issues also came up regarding the e-commerce operator and the composition scheme. So we were able to link those sections with section 23 and the concept of e-commerce operator. Thank you very much once again, and all the participants for patient listening and participating in the discussion on section 23. Looking forward for section 24 discussion next week. Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.